I go by Eisa Murphy. I was born Darren Murphy. I say I was born here in Toronto and raised as a Roman Catholic. Really kind of an everyday household, living in a suburb and going to elementary school and high school. Really nothing out of the ordinary, I don't think, in terms of an upbringing. I went to church every Sunday. I was an altar boy for a number of years growing up, and just family had really strong Catholic values and really strong Catholic faith. My grandparents on my father's side would go to church every day, pray the rosary, and very staunch Catholic upbringing. My mom's side was also very strict, but not quite to that extent. Really kind of started to part ways with the church getting into the later part of my high school years. Just kind of started having a lot of questions that weren't getting properly answered, and I just simply kind of started doing my own investigation and my own research, and I kind of came to the conclusion that I don't really know what the truth is. The concept of the Trinity, the divinity of Jesus, and just a lot of, where all the values in the church came from. I think that most of what practicing Christians and Catholics see today is very much man-made doctrine, as opposed to divinely inspired wisdom and divine messaging. You're not really encouraged to read the Bible or to do anything like that. It's more of follow the doctrine of the church, which is man-made. I didn't really have an idea about the validity of Jesus' message, even because it was very hard to determine where the man-made infiltrations came and what may have been original messages or teachings. I didn't know, that Jesus was a prophet or a son of God or whatever. I felt that he was just a really influential man that existed in history that, obviously had a profound impact on, billions of people over the next, millennium. So, that was kind of where I left my belief, and feeling that, I'm not going to go to church because the church part of it is what's kind of throwing me off here. My family is very involved in Catholic groups, and so we had discussions and just kind of listened to what they had to say, and spoke to some people who were learned, not necessarily priests or of the priesthood, but people who had vast knowledge, who had studied the religion. And I also, like I mentioned, turned to literature. I started reading books about the Catholic Church, and books about Jesus and the history side of Jesus, as well as kind of some of the stuff that had not really been talked about in school and in the mastering the sermons. And essentially from that, I kind of came to the conclusion again that I again don't know the answer, but I know what the answer isn't, and that was really where I lost my way, really. At the beginning, I was encouraged to ask questions. They said, "Oh, it's good to ask questions." And then as my questions kind of became more, I guess, unanswerable and more philosophical, the kind of the tone of that started to change. At first you're cute little kid who's curious about your faith, and then all of a sudden it starts to become, hey, well, that's just the way it is. That's it, right? One of the big turnoffs for me was around the idea of salvation. I think that when you're asking somebody, so does that mean that this devout Muslim or this devout Jew or this devout Hindu or this devout Buddhist that is a really good person? They may be the best person, like next to Mother Teresa and all these other Catholic saints. Well, what's going to happen to them? Well, if they don't accept Jesus, they're going to go to hell. And I couldn't accept that as being the true message of God, and that was really just a big sticking point for me. Among the other historical things that we mentioned, the life of Jesus and such. So the questions kind of stopped getting that kind of encouragement and started becoming more of just have faith, just have faith, just have faith. And I guess the kind of tagline I guess I had for myself was having faith in God is one thing, but what you're talking about is having faith in man, because what you're telling me is a message. It's a creation of man, not a belief in God. You know, there's two differences there. I always believed in God because it was logical. You know, something always created from something. You know, the earth came from something. You know, even the Big Bang, even if it started off with the tiniest little atom that just exploded into everything we know as the universe today, that tiny little atom still came from something. It's just a matter of common sense bringing you to infinity, which is the concept of God. God is infinite. So you know, you don't have to, I think, be a science major to see the logic in that. So it was never a matter of the existence of God. It was, you know, who are you to think that you can tell me this is what God wants, or who are you to tell me that this is how God's going to judge me? You know, it was very what I found to be arrogant of mankind to have, you know, kind of created this whole religion. And to be quite honest with you, at that point in my life, I didn't really know a lot about other religions, but I truly felt that, you know, I can apply that same logic to any other faith and say that this faith is created by, infiltrated by, influenced by man, and, you know, who are we again to say that this is the true faith of God? I actually even made a challenge to my now wife before she was my wife that you know you're a very devout Muslim, but I don't know anything about your faith, but you know, let's talk about it one day and I'll tell you what's wrong with it. And I was certainly proved wrong. I felt that the value in the church was that I had a good upbringing that instilled good values in me. So I did see benefit in it. I felt that I would want to have my kids go to a Catholic church, or Catholic school, I should say, because they would get those same value and that same quality of upbringing that I got, that I didn't feel I would have got had I been brought up in a public school system or, you know, outside the teachings of the church. It was just a matter of the necessity of going through the rituals that had been brought into the church that I felt didn't add any value to my daily life. So at the point of, you know, being a 17-year-old teenager, I mean, you know everything. So I felt, okay, great. You know, I'm glad I learned all this stuff, morals, values. Is, you know, it's awesome. Now I could just, you know, I could be my own guide, be my own kind of my own bar. You know, I figured I could draw my own line in the sand. This is what I find acceptable, and anything beyond that, I'm not going to do because, you know, I have these values. And you know, I can do this on my own. What I didn't really think about was, you know, that line in the sand, you know, how to keep that from getting washed away with the tides and redrawing that line and having it be in the same place every time. Over the next 10-year period of my life, that line in the sand, if I look back to where it started and, you know, where it ended up, I mean, it is night and day. I mean, I was doing things and, you know, living a lifestyle that I, 10 years ago, I would have said, oh no, like there's no way I would do that, or there's no way I'd go down that path, or there's no way I'd act in that way, or use this language, or, you know, I just, you know, I got completely off the path. And I mean, it was people I surrounded myself with, people, you know, that I felt that I wanted to be like, you know, just setting the wrong role models. And I don't regret any of that experience because it's given me good life experience. It's given me a taste of that lifestyle. And it's made me appreciate now, you know, being able to, you know, have a path and have a goal and have a role models that are you know, much farther above and beyond what I could ever hope to be. So that's an unwavering thing. I mean, through that 10-year period of my life, I entered into a long-term relationship. I was with someone for over 7 years. And we owned a house, we had a dog, you know, I was living the American dream, I guess you could say. And I was never really convinced that this was the person for me, that this was the life that I was supposed to live on this earth. But, you know, didn't really have anything to say that it wasn't either, right? I was, you know, kind of going through life really day to day, happy one day, not happy another day. But just always trying to move forward and look forward. that relationship ended at the beginning of 2012. We went through the kind of stressful process of selling the house, dividing up everything that we had had. And at that point, after just spending 7 years of my life kind of in a certain mindset, I really decided at that point in my life to open up my mind to anything and everything. And initially, I mean, that brought me to a lot of partying and a lot of just lax lifestyle, spending quite a bit of money and, just going out for the whole weekend and, being up late at night and, again, nothing that I regret, but just, definitely not something that I could have sustained long term in my life. And it's almost funny that that same type of mentality of saying, I'm going to do anything and try everything, brought me to learn more about Islam. It kind of started off with just a couple of, I can't call them coincidences, but just a few instances that happened in my life. I said to a friend of mine who was getting married in Pakistan, yeah, I'll go to your wedding in Pakistan. Sure, why not? I mean, a year ago, I would have been like, oh, world travel, 18-hour flight, just, it's too much for me. But, I said, I'm going to go to Pakistan. This Pakistani co-worker of mine said, let me teach you some Urdu. So I said, yeah, sure, why not? I never would have cared to learn Urdu, but I was trying everything. I had an open mind. So I said, yeah, let's learn some Urdu. So, started doing that, just, some downtime at work, and we started talking more. I was going to IKEA one day, coming out of the store, it's a big billboard outside IKEA, says, read the Quran. It's a giant billboard beside the highway. I kind of laughed at it and said to my coworker the next day at work, when we were having our little meeting for learning Urdu, I kind of joked around. I said, what are you guys, recruiting or something? Like, what's up with this giant billboard outside IKEA? And so it was just, some kind of little things like that. And then kind of one day out of the blue, this coworker asked me if I'd ever, been to a protest or a rally. And I said, no, I'd never had anything that I care enough to protest about. She says, well, would you like to attend one on Saturday? And I was kind of like, well, what's it about? Like, what is this rally? And she said, well, it's called Al-Quds Day. And so I said, okay, well, what's that? And then she asked me if I knew about the Palestine-Israel conflict. And, I said, essentially, I know the basics of it. They took this land and nobody seems to care about, what happens to these people who used to live here. But that was really all I knew about it. So I said, send me some more information and, I'll, I'm open for anything. I'll come out and check out this rally. Sure, why not, right? So she sends me this email one day. She's at work, I'm at home. She sends me this email, says, check out this video. And I watch this video, and it's a video of Lauren Booth speaking at a Islamic conference. And it's about an hour-long video. I'm watching this whole video. It was very interesting. I found it very fascinating. But I got to the end of the video, and I was really wondering, like, what was this video all about? Why did she send me this video? Because she didn't talk about Al-Quds Day, not even for a minute. I mean, she talked about going to Palestine and her experience in Palestine. But the main focus of her whole hour-long talk was her journey to Islam, how she came to embrace Islam. And I joked around with my coworker again, saying, what are you trying to convert me here? Like, said, let me check out this rally and, what's up with this video, right? So I did a little bit of reading into it and said, okay, this is something I think I can at least check out, and I can go in as an impartial observer, see what it's all about. And I mean, I think I probably had this kind of image in my mind of, seeing Muslims on TV at a rally and just kind of the screaming and the fists in the air and, the guy with his mouth wide open, frozen in the front page of the newspaper. And when I got there, it was a completely different scene than what I really expected. And they had speakers of all faiths there. There was the rabbis speaking, and there was Christians speaking, and then the Muslim scholars. But listening to the speeches, the Muslim scholars, they kind of touched me in a place within my heart that I wasn't expecting to get there. I was just, some guy going downtown to check out this big event, and I was really so inspired that, I mean, by the time they started the march from Queen's Park down to the U.S. consulate, I was fully chanting and cheering along with all the Muslim brothers and sisters there about, the oppression in Palestine and, all of the various things they had. I was really just elated, and I didn't expect to feel that way going into this. And I went home after the event and was just on this really what I can only describe as being like a spiritual high. I had this awesome feeling. I went home and just kind of spent the night alone in my apartment, and drinking and doing the stuff that I would normally do on a Saturday night. When I woke up the next morning, that's really when my life completely changed. I had started to get curious about the Quran and about Islam. I mean, having listened to the Lauren Booth video, and I mean, seeing this random billboard, and just sort of piqued my curiosity. But it wasn't anything that I, was considering. Hey, let me try that out. I mean, I didn't need a religion. I was, I had it all figured out. Right, 10 years of my life, I knew what I was doing. And when I woke up the next morning, that spiritual high that I felt the next morning, the last night, I should say, sorry, that spiritual high that I felt the last night was just completely gone. And I would describe it as having a spiritual hangover. I felt kind of like empty and kind of like, what do I do? I had my normal morning routine, which, wasn't probably the healthiest thing in the world. And I didn't want to go back down that road again. And I just found myself looking out the balcony, looking over the city of Toronto. I'm up on the 24th floor, just looking out, seeing, for miles and miles. And I just didn't know what to do. I was not thinking. I was just kind of in a sort of meditative state. And all of a sudden I had these words in my heart that came to me that said, submit to God and everything will be okay. And I mean, it just completely overwhelmed me. I just felt this joy. I've heard poets and writers describe this wave of joy, and I didn't know what that was until that exact moment, because I was so overcome by this joy. It just felt like I was being swept away, and I just cried. I wasn't sobbing, but just tears were just coming down my face, and I just had this change that I didn't care for any of the drinking or the partying or any of that other lifestyle. Like, I just realized what was wrong with me. I felt like I had been purified. I felt like I had been spiritually cleansed. I felt like I had been reborn. And on that day, it was the 19th of August last year, it was the Eid al-Fitr, I said to my coworker what happened, and I said, what do I do? I don't want to lose this feeling. And she said, well, what do you think you should do? And I said, well, I need to embrace a new lifestyle before I slip back and go back to my old ways. And she said, well, then Darren, I openly invite you to learn Islam and embrace it. And really what I can say is I did. I just started learning it, and it just felt right. Although I had this amazing feeling, I didn't know what to do. I wasn't all of a sudden like, submit to God. Oh, okay, I know how to do that. And that was where reading about Islam came in. And learning how to submit to God, learning how to live your life in a way that would be pleasing to God and also rewarding to you. The whole experience of coming to Islam for me was very much an emotional experience, an emotion in regards to my relationship with God. I didn't look at it from an intellectual standpoint or from a historical standpoint and say, well, Islam's got more historical credibility than any of the other faiths, and because that's irrelevant. I think that what feels good, what goes with what you know in your heart to be true is what you need to do, and that's how God, that's how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would give His religion to us. He would make us feel it. It wouldn't be, there is an intellectual side to it, of course, but it would be something that you would feel is right. When you read a hadith, when you read an interpretation, when you read somebody's essay or their paper or you listen to somebody's lecture, you don't need to have a historical background. You don't have to have, years of studying in Hausa or philosophy training, or it feels right. If it feels true, if it feels right, then go with it. And everything that I read about Islam felt right. Any of the concerns that I had previously with other faiths, specifically Christianity, in terms of the human infiltration into it, I didn't have here because it all felt true, and that was what brought me there. It was a intellectual looking, but the emotional validation is what really brought me to Islam. I spent every waking moment that I could reading different articles, reading different papers, reading books, just reading everything that I could about Islam, and finding out there's different sects of Islam and different schools of thought, and within each sect there's different ways of looking at things, and these are the different beliefs of these different schools of thought, and it could have become a little bit overwhelming had I not had a little bit of guidance in saying, okay, try looking at these resources, try looking at this. If you just Google Islam or Google, something generic like that, you're going to come up with, a whole wide range of things that you might not necessarily want to read. So, I alhamdulillah had a lot of help from my colleague pointing me in the right direction in terms of this is what you can read. I was on alislam.org, and they have just a wealth of resources there, which really helped guide me and further my understanding of it. There's the Revert Islam website that I went on to, and essentially after 9 days of intensive reading and looking at all the different aspects of it, the different beliefs. One thing that I remember sticking out for me was the whole debate between predestination, free will, and then the combination of both of them. And not a philosophy major, but I like to think of myself as a thinker, and that's what always had made sense to me. That combination. And 9 days after I had this intensely emotional experience, which made me say, okay, I want to learn about Islam. 9 days after that, I decided that I've learned enough to say that I want to consider myself as a Muslim. And I think it was about 3 a.m. in my apartment on a Tuesday night. I did my shahada, and the next morning I woke up for the first time as a Muslim. And I remember that was a very unique feeling. I remember being in the elevator on my way down to the car in the morning to go to work, and I said it out loud for the first time, I'm a Muslim. And it felt right, but it just sounded so weird. It's nothing that I never ever would have expected. In a million years. And any of my friends and family, they never would have thought either. We're talking about a 9-day period here where I was partying and calling up my buddies to go out on a Friday night, to 9 days later saying that's not for me, and I'm a Muslim now. So I kind of kept to myself for a little while. I just kept reading. Kept learning. I was introduced to a very good friend of mine, who's now a very good friend of mine, I should say. I was introduced to him right around this time, and alhamdulillah, he helped give me a little bit more focus when it came to reading, because once you get the basics down, you then start to say, okay, what next? And then you have the same problem of there's just so much information out there, so many resources. And he used a great analogy. You want to go up the ladder one step at a time. There's no sense in reaching for the 12th rung when you're on the first. So, really appreciative for him to have been able to give me that guidance and to help me along with my reading. But that was very important for me to gain as much knowledge and understanding of it as I could, because although the emotional experience is what connected me to Islam and brought me to have a relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when it came time to speak with my parents, when it came time to speak with my friends and my relatives, I felt that I needed to have something more than, well, it just feels right, you know, like that's not going to satisfy them. And not that I felt that I had to satisfy anybody, but to make sure that it was, you know, I was able to communicate, you know, what I felt, and, you know, not just this crazy thing happened to me that, you know, some people may or may not believe, but that, you know, there's actually wisdom in it. There's more to it than that. And, you know, Islam gave me all the answers that I needed in terms of why things happen, you know, why something is forbidden, why something is permitted, you know, why we do something like this. You know, everything that, you know, kind of seems mysterious about it to somebody looking in is insanely logical and just makes, you know, so much sense that, I mean, once you find out the why behind something, you really say, okay, yeah, why would anybody do this? You know, like why aren't all events segregated? Why, you know, like why don't you say, you know, don't hug my wife goodbye, don't even shake her hand, you know? I mean, just stuff like that. It just seems like so foreign, so, you know, far out there. But once you start to learn the wisdom behind it, you say, oh, hang on a second, like I know what they're talking about there, you know? Like I never felt it was, you know, that was what the right thing to do was. You know, I was never the guy that, you know, I wanted to go, you know, hug everybody and, you know, give my friend's wife a kiss on the cheek, or, you know, all that kind of stuff. You know, I never felt it was the right thing to do. And, you know, here's this religion telling me that, you know, this is why we don't do this, right? This is why we believe this. This is why we do what we do. Respect towards women was a big thing for me that drew me to Islam. When I started to read about Islam and find out more about it, and you know, what all the different you know, beliefs entail, respect towards women was a very big thing that appealed to me. I always had that kind of high level respect towards women, and you know, I was never that guy that would try to chat up a girl, or, you know, I always felt it was like trying to fool them into liking you, and, you know, that was never something that I was interested in doing, because I felt that I wasn't giving them the due respect that they deserve, right? And, you know, that was something that you know, appealed to me. I mean, aside from that, and the discipline that Islam prescribes with the daily prayers, you know, the diet, I mean, everything that goes into it, it's a comprehensive way of life that, when I decided to become a Muslim, it wasn't something that I felt I had to change my ways to all of a sudden be a Muslim, to prescribe to Islam. It was something that I felt I could put on that fit perfectly, that was going to give me a reason to say, no, I don't do that. You know, even though I had always felt that I don't want to do that, you know, you become a victim of society, and you say, okay, well, yeah, okay, I'll do that because that's what you do. That's what a guy does. That's what people do. That's what everybody does. But Islam gave me the reason to say no. You know, it fit with my viewpoints. It fit with my mentality. It fit with the way I felt about the world. And you know, it gave me the outline to live the life that I always wanted to live, that I felt that I should live, but that I had no idea how to live it. You know, it was a perfect fit. A lot of the stuff I was able to kind of comprehend on my own. Anything that I had questions about, you know, I would turn to my friend, ask questions. I mean, you know, even going to the local alim, you know, asked a few questions, but that was more so, I think, with regards to some fiqh questions where, you know, answers weren't so readily available. I mean, most of the stuff, it just makes sense, and there was things that, you know, just from reflecting on them, I was able to, you know, really grasp, like the concept of wudu. Like right almost from the first time I started to do wudu, I really, you know, felt like, okay, you know, I'm purifying, you know, my eyes and my mouth, and, you know, what I'm looking at, what I'm saying, and I'm purifying what I'm doing, and what I'm reaching for, and what I'm touching, and, you know, I'm purifying what I'm thinking, and, you know, where I'm going, and, you know, like I kind of had that whole connection, really just from reflecting on it. And then I read the Dawah Salat, and, you know, Khomeini articulates it so much better than I ever could, but, you know, the concept was there, right? I truly feel, I believe that, you know, because Islam is the completed religion of God, of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that it doesn't take a lot to connect with it, because he created us, and he created this religion. I mean, it's supposed to be a fit. It's supposed to be that easy. It's not supposed to be something, I mean, that's a challenge. I mean, you know, Islam preaches moderation. You know, it's not something that should have to be so excessive. When you've come so far off the path, and in all fairness, you've come off the path not knowing you're off the path, but when you've come off the path so far, it can seem to be extreme to get to that point. But when you're at that point, it's as if you can breathe freely for the first time. I had so many different masks that I wore in my life. I had different groups of friends that, you know, demanded that I act certain ways around different people. You know, there was also work, colleagues, family, certain members of my family that, you know, you kind of had to put on a different facade when you're around them to make sure that they were as accepting as possible, that they, you know, thought the most of you that you could. And when I came to Islam, all of that disappeared. I was able to be me. I felt like I was a 12-year-old kid again, just innocent. You're just yourself. You know, a 12-year-old kid will just say what they think. They won't think about it. They won't worry about anybody who's around. They're just honest with themselves, and they're honest with the people they're around. I felt like that, except that I was a 27-year-old man that had life experience, that had the courage to stand up for what they believe in, the courage to say something in front of people, and, you know, just the ability to be intellectual and think about things from an adult standpoint. I mean, I felt more powerful than I ever had in my life. You know, combining all of those things. I mean, to be an adult but to have the innocence of youth was just, I mean, it's just an indescribable feeling. And, you know, that gives you a reason, that gives you a motivation to avoid, you know, the social pitfalls, I would say, social pitfalls that we have in life these days. You know, haven't been back to the restaurants and the bars, you know, even to go hang out with a friend that is still interested in that thing. You know, the benefit of maintaining certain relationships, you know, all of a sudden they used to be the most important thing in the world to me. You know, now they've been, you know, cast down 2, 3, 4, 5 rungs in my list of priorities in life. You know, I mean, my relationship with God is number one, you know, first and foremost. And when you have that, everything else falls into place. It doesn't have to be something that you struggle with. The reactions were varied. And looking back on it, I think that, you know, as a whole, the farther away somebody was from me, the less connected they were to me, the less they reacted to it. So, I mean, my inner circle of friends, my family was really at the core of that, and, you know, my closest friends, and then acquaintances, coworkers, you know, kind of so on and so forth. The farther they were from me, the less that really impacted them. I think one of the most memorable discussions was with my mom, which was not too long after the Shahada. She was up at the cottage. I was going up with my brother. We're heading up to go camping, and we stopped at the cottage for the night, kind of like a halfway point to get up to where we were going. And I'd felt like right from the beginning that, you know, what I had done, you know, when I did my Shahada, it was for me. First of all, it was for me. So, I mean, I wasn't going around telling people or you know, saying, hey, guess what I did last night, or, you know, guess what I am now. I just kind of went on with my daily routine and, you know, did it for myself. I wasn't at the same time trying to hide it. If somebody was asking me, you know, what have you been up to, or, you know, what you've been doing lately, you know, it would naturally come up in conversation. So we went up to the cottage. It was my grandfather's cottage on my dad's side. Pictures of Jesus and Mary and crosses all over the place, and I hadn't seen my mom in a few weeks, so I was upstairs. My mom's like, you know, sit down, let's talk. How you been? What have you been up to? So I told her, look, you know, I found my soulmate, and I've, you know, come back to God. And she started to cry. She said, you're not going to believe this, but I've been praying for that for you, like, all year. and she was just so happy. And so I was just kind of sitting there on the bed casually, and she says, "So are you going to start coming back to church?" And I said, "Well, no." And she says, "Well, what do you mean, no?" I said, "Well, I haven't gone back to the church." I said, "I found God." And she's like, "Okay, so are you going to go to another church?" Or I said, "Well, no." I said, "Mom, I embrace Islam." And her ear-to-ear grin immediately left her face. And just like seeing her eyes, looked like somebody just punched her right in the stomach, and she just kind of lost all of that happiness that she had at the moment. And I think the first thing she said was, "Oh my God, Darren, have you been brainwashed?" And I kind of laughed and said, "No." And she said, "But what about 9/11?" And I mean, just kind of went along that line. And I mean, I truly believe that Allah guided this conversation that I had with my mom, because I was able to incorporate everything that I had gone through in terms of Islamic knowledge and stuff. I talked about the prophets and about Jesus, and about how we believe in all this stuff. I think she said, "Well, don't they worship multiple gods?" And I said, "No, let me explain it to you a little bit more." And as I'm talking to her, as I'm discussing, she kept, "Shh, your father's going to hear. Your father's going to hear. He's downstairs with my grandpa, and they're praying the rosary together." So that was it. I ended up talking to my mom for about 3 hours. We went down to the dock, sat under the stars. We talked about Islam a little bit, and we just had some general conversation as well. But it was a really amazing experience, because I really connected with my mom that night. I mean, we've always had a good relationship, but when it came to this whole experience, it kind of made her a little less ignorant than she was at the beginning of the conversation. And she said, "Let's not tell your dad right away." She didn't really sleep much that night, and when I got up for my Fajr prayers the next morning, she was kind of like up and just kind of worried about me and all this and that. But me and my brother got up, we went on our way, and I felt really good about the conversation that we'd had, because I really had no idea how it was going to go. I was a little bit nervous about how the reaction was going to be, because it was just one of those things that's a very sensitive subject, especially considering their pride in their faith, right? So that was a really good conversation. It was that same weekend. I think it was the next day when I was camping with my brother. We were up around the campfire, and we were just chatting, and I ended up telling him, and he was just like, "Cool." He didn't really have a huge reaction. He's not a churchgoer. He's just a really good guy. He shared a story with me at that point where he tried to go back to church, and then he heard about some of the more bad press of the church in the newspaper, and he's just like, "Okay, I can't. Like, this doesn't work for me." So we just kind of talked about it a little bit, and he kind of learned a little bit about it, and I was actually surprised at how much he already knew. He knew about halal and all that kind of stuff, and so it was just a very general conversation. And I mean, we pretty much carried on with our weekend like we would have any other time. Fishing and campfire and eating and all that kind of stuff. And that was it. The next big reaction, I would say, was from my dad. That was definitely a conversation that I was not looking forward to. Again, not knowing, like, how am I gonna tell him this, right? At this point now, we're into October, and this colleague that had initially brought me to the Al-Quds rally, I was now like basically engaged to, and we were going to be getting married at the end of October. We were going to have our nikah ceremony done. So, I mean, it was really at this point like, okay, I have to tell him. It's not a matter of waiting for the right moment. It's creating the right moment. And I remember I went to my parents' house one Sunday evening, and told my mom, okay, we're gonna have the talk with him today. And we got dinner ready. We ate dinner, and just the right moment never came up. And it wasn't something that I wanted to force. And, you know, I ended up going home at like 11:30, 12 o'clock at night, not having told him. So I went back the next weekend, and again, not having any strategy or any idea of, you know, what I was going to do. I was just eating dinner, and it was about 5 or 6 years ago when my grandmother, my dad's mom, was really sick. She had stomach cancer. She was in a long battle with her cancer, and so my dad was going over a lot to spend time with her at the house. And you know, my grandfather and my dad's twin brother, they're praying and they're doing the rosaries and all that kind of stuff. And my dad didn't really know about all that kind of stuff. He would go to church on Sunday, but, you know, how do I pray a rosary, right? You know, it's one of those kind of, you know, Sunday Catholics, right? So he started to get really into it at that point. And so what I did was, I mean, it just came to me. I mean, I didn't plan this. I mean, Allah gave me this kind of approach. I just asked him. I said, "Hey, Dad, you know what? I know, like a while back when Grandma was sick, you had a kind of experience that brought you to closer to God. You know, can you tell me about that?" And he did. I mean, we talked for over an hour about God and about what we're here for and all of this kind of stuff. He talked about his experience, and I mean, we talked about all of that for over an hour before I gave him any information. And, you know, I told him that, like, look, you know, I had a similar experience myself, and I went on to share the story of being, you know, in my apartment getting this message and, you know, just coming to God. And then I told him, I said, I started reading this amazing book that just really touched me. Like, every time I read it, it inspired me in so many different ways. I said, it's brought me to tears, like, more times than I can count. And I put out this little notebook that I had, where I had some short surah from the Quran in there. I had written them down actually when I went camping, so I could pray. At the time I went camping, I was like, you know, less than 2 weeks. No, I was less than a week praying when I went up to the camping trip, and so I was just reading the surahs out of this little notebook that I had. So I started reading these surah to him, and then I came to the one, you know, to me my religion, to you your religion. And my dad says, what book is this? Like, and as I reached into my bag and I pulled out the copy of the Quran, and I put it on the table and I slid it over to him. And you just see his face thinking and kind of going through it, because for now, a 2-hour conversation that we'd had, we've been sharing points. We've been, that's how God is. That's why we're here. That's what, you know, that's what the message is. That's, you know, it was all common ground that we were talking about for a good 2 hours, both emotionally and philosophically. And, you know, it was just this great conversation. And then when he realized that, you know, I'm, you know, coming from this, he really didn't have anything to say. He didn't have any counter argument. He didn't. I think the only thing he did was he kind of looked at the book. He didn't open it. He just looked at the cover of the book, and then he slid it back to me, and he said, "This is from the devil, and don't read this. This is gonna take you off the path that you've been on." I said, "This is what's kept me on the path that I've been on," and you know, we, you know, basically said, okay, well, you know, to me my religion and to you your religion, and there was no anger. We hugged. I mean, my mom's in the background crying here because she was terrified about how this conversation was going to go. But it was an amazing connect with my dad. You know, he still hasn't accepted it. He didn't come to the nikah. He didn't come to the rukhsati for my wife. You know, because he feels that as part of his strong beliefs, he can't endorse my conversion. But I mean, there was no negativity, there was no anger, there was no animosity, there was no rejecting of me as his son, or, you know, I mean, I was honestly, you know, I thought maybe he's going to say, well, like, okay, I never want to see you again. You know, I had no idea what to expect, and I mean, alhamdulillah, it was just the most amazing experience that Allah guided my 2 conversations with my parents in, I mean, 2 completely separate ways, but they both ended up being, I think, the absolute best approach for both of them, in their own regard. So that was those were definitely my two big conversations with people in Islam. Getting involved in the community. I mean, I think that any white guy going to the mosque stands out. A white guy who's more than 6.5 feet tall stands out at the grocery store. So, you know, I mean, I certainly was the center of a lot of attention. But the people in the community have just been amazing and receptive. I've made so many friends, had so many people offer their help and their assistance, their guidance, their advice. I mean, everything. I've met so many people that it's quite an amazing thing, and you know, just alhamdulillah for that. My wife's family was very open, very receptive. You know, there was a little bit, just a very short period of time where there was a little bit of just getting to know each other a little bit more, because there's that cultural difference, and just being able to accept that, you know, okay, my daughter is going to marry somebody outside of the culture, which was a little bit of something that I don't think they expected, but you know, they accepted me essentially right from the beginning, which alhamdulillah made things a lot easier for us. I mean, the fact that, you know, I converted in August, met her parents in September, and we got married in October. I mean, you know, I mean, how could you really, you know, ask God for any more than that? I mean, it's got to be some sort of record or something like that. I've participated in outreach programs that have been organized through various organizations at the masjid. So yes, they do it, but no, in the sense that I think that the best way to reach out to people is through your akhlaq and through the way that you act. I mean, you know, we're not out there, you know, to, you know, throw Qurans at people or to tell people to read the Quran. You know, those things may intrigue somebody's thoughts, but, you know, again, I feel that based on my experience, the way to the way to appeal to somebody is through their heart, through their emotion. You know, so, you know, to tell somebody to, you know, to read this, if they're not ready to read it, it's not going to make any sense to them. It's not going to speak to them. You know, your heart has to be open, you know, before you can have that intellectual connect. And you know, we do what we can, I think. There's always room for improvement, but you have to balance that with, you know, is the world ready to hear the message, right? So do we do enough? You know, maybe not, but are we doing stuff? Definitely. And, you know, are we going to continue to do stuff? Yes. And do I want to be a part of that? You know, inshallah, absolutely. I'd like to be as big a part of that as I can, because one thing that really hit close to home for me was, you know, out of the, you know, huge circle of friends that I'd built up, you know, throughout my life, why me? You know, why did God bring me back to this path? Why did God, I felt, you know, save my soul from, you know, the life that I was living? And I really decided, well, not necessarily that I decided, but I really came to the realization that, you know, He didn't do this just for me. You know, I'm going to be, inshallah, an instrument, you know, that Allah can use to reach out to other people. You know, I think that a lot of people, you know, in my circle, having seen the transformation that I've gone through, you know, have, you know, kind of questioned, like, you know, what's up, right? But then when we talk, and when I ask them at the end of the day, you know, who would you ask to watch your kids? Old Darren or new Darren? They say, well, when you put it like that, I'd rather have new Darren watch my kids, right? So I say, well, so isn't that the way that, you know, you would encourage somebody to live their life? Isn't that the way that you would want to live their life? And, you know, I haven't heard a valid argument against that. You know, so, you know, that's what I want to do. I want to be a part of the dawah. I want to be a part of the outreach. And, you know, I think, you know, being I guess I'd say I'm a visible minority in Islam, you know, that could be to my benefit. Submit to God and everything will be okay. I mean, it's where it all began, and I mean that summarizes it. You know, I mean, I've turned to the Quran many times, you know, to just, you know, open up a random page and read, and it's always made me feel better, right? I mean, there's not one specific thing that I turn to, but you know, the book it's really a miracle. I mean, the miracle is the book. It's just the most amazing thing that you could ever read, and just how it speaks to you on so many different levels. I mean, I was one of the first things I started doing, and alhamdulillah, I finished reading the Quran in its entirety within the first 3 months or so, 3 to 4 months. I read the whole thing from cover to cover just because of how powerful it was. When I started off, I just open it randomly and read, and I mean, like I'm telling you, like every day I cried reading that book because it was just so powerful. And I said, okay, at some point I said, I'm not going to just do this randomly anymore. I want to read it all, and it's just was just one of the most amazing experiences in my life. Doing my salah, opening up the Quran, reading a few pages at a time, and just having that as a guide in your life is irreplaceable. I mentioned before that line in the sand. I don't have a line in the sand anymore. I have a rock. I have an anchor. I have the rope of Allah to hold on to, that is unwavering, that will apply to every situation that you get into, and it's just been an amazing experience for me to become a better person, and through becoming a better person, strengthen the relationships with people that I had before that could be strengthened, and have severed the relationships with people that I had before that couldn't be strengthened and had to be severed. So it's cleansed me, it's cleansed my circle of friends, it's cleansed my mind, my heart, made me a new person.